there's so much jargon in the property world regarding the different strategies. We want to explain exactly what these two particular strategies are. And we use them to supercharge our properties when we first bought them, because it was a way to really maximize the cash flow out of a property by using these strategies. And they're commonly referred to as SA or HMO. So Ruth, what is an HMO?
HMO is a house of multiple occupancy where there are more than 3 tenants sharing a property, and they are renting a room, each room.
Yeah. So they are renting each room and they're not related to each other. So you can get a house and put a family in it, but because they're all connected, it's seen as one tenancy, whereas you can do an HMO and you're technically renting each room to separate individuals, and they can either rent the rooms under different tenancy agreements or under one shared tenancy agreement. So it could just be like, example of this is, say, some students who are going to university, they're not related, they're all friends, they want to club together to rent a house, and the house is rented to this group of friends under one tenancy agreement, or the house is rented to the friends on individual lettings per room. So that's the best way to explain what an HMO is. And depending on the area, you might need to have a license for the HMO. And HMOs do come with a bit of regulation, or a lot of regulation, depending on where you are. And there's certain areas that don't even allow HMOs anymore, because it's seen by the council as there being too many in an area, or it's sort of transforming an area into sort of an HMO town, when regular homeowners just want it to be sort of more of a family environment and not necessarily.
It's oversaturated. The council can say when it's oversaturated with HMOs. Yeah.
But there are definitely areas that are a lot more HMO friendly, and sort of it's HMO land, and that is just sort of what that area is seen as, especially around universities, around.
Yeah, if you're from a university town, then there's obviously more demand for HMOs in the area.
But if we're just touching on students as a target market, you obviously need to be aware that these people are young people who are leaving home for the very first time and sort of having the very first experience of living by themselves.
Being a young adult.
Of what it means, to be independent, look after yourself, look after your home. So there is, it does come with some risks sometimes, depending on your target market, of
parties.
Yeah, and just maybe more maintenance.
Yes,
maybe they don't open the windows as much if they're hanging their washing.
Yeah, so you might get
cleaning.
a lot of damp. But so the advice is make sure that you always have a guarantor.
That particular HMO, houses of multiple occupation, can be really beneficial cash wise, because say you bought a house, what you could do with planning permission, or even within permitted development, that basically means that permitted development basically means you're allowed to extend the property within the scope that's allowed by the council, because you don't have to apply to develop the land. You don't have to apply to make changes to your property with the council, and you can basically change the structure, the layout of a property to add more bedrooms, and you basically benefit from having more heads on beds, essentially. So the more people you can responsibly put into a house, the more rent you can charge as a whole. It does come with regulations, so it means installing things like thumb locks so that people can, mainly fire safety, so that if there is any emergency, people can get out quickly.
Fire doors.
Yeah, so those all come at a bigger expense, and the more people you have in the house, the more facilities you're going to need, like more bathrooms, more toilets, a decent sized kitchen, storage cupboards for people to keep all of their food, and just make sure that everybody's got enough space. And then you also have your license on top to take care of if if it does apply to you. And that's usually if there's more like a certain number of floors in the house and a certain number of people, but it totally depends on the council, and it does require a little more work and there is a bit more maintenance. But yeah, that is definitely one way, and we have done this way. That was the first strategy we started with. You can hear our other podcast all about that. But yeah, HMOs is one of the ways to supercharge property, and that means houses are multiple occupation.
Yes.
The other supercharge way you can supercharge a property is by turning it into what's called an SA.
Service accommodation. Service accommodation is when you don't actually have tenants, they are guests that stay at your property. With a service accommodation, it's short-term rentals, so it's usually under 6 months. A lot of the time,
maybe 3 months.
Maybe 3 months, yeah. Depending on who is renting or who is staying at your service accommodation. So we know people who provide service accommodation to contractors, or you can provide your accommodation to have guests who are corporate guests. Or holidayers. So
I think that's what service accommodation is known for the most, holidays. So if you think of Airbnb, Booking.com or VRBO, that's the sort of platform that these properties are listed on. And people tend to stay an average of 2 to 3 nights and then go, and it, like Ruth said, it could be for leisure or it could be for work. You can get medium term. Yes, those are the 3-monthers generally.
Yeah.
Generally anything under 6 months is seen as a short term, is just seen as a short term guest, and they don't have any like tenant rights because they're not signing any tenancy agreement with you. You're literally providing them with an all inclusive stay. So that means you're covering their bills, gas, water, electric, internet, council tax. It's furnished, and they are just.
The reason why short-term rentals are so successful is because not everyone, I don't think many millennials anymore, but not everyone wants to stay in a hotel room where there's no kitchen. It doesn't feel very homey.
Yeah.
By staying in a service accommodation, you get all of your homey needs, and from my own experience from being at a hotel, I don't ever sleep very well. But when I go and stay somewhere where I am able to cook for myself, do my own laundry, I sleep a lot better at night knowing that I can replicate
all of the creature comforts.
Exactly.
From home. Yeah. So that's why you can command a higher nightly rate, because everything is included in the price. And because it's not a long-term stay, they're usually only staying for a few nights. You can charge a bigger rate per night, and that can be very lucrative. On average, it can be up to 50% more profit than a regular long-term rental if somebody was staying for more than 6 months. So that's why people are appealed by the service accommodation, although there are new regulations that are coming into place.
Yeah.
It's not really regulated that much at the moment.
And even though you are also, it's to be transparent, is that even though you are making a higher cash flow, there are so many more bills and a lot. And the same with HMOs, maybe service accommodations a little bit more hands-on.
Oh, it's a lot more
hands-on.
Because you have to go and you have to clean. You have to address guest concerns as and when they pop up. There is quick communication is essential in this business.
This is why we outsource our management for this, because it is service accommodation is a full-on business.
It's a hospitality business. You're basically running a small hotel in your property, and there are a lot of moving factors that come with that. More management, but better, but higher. You can charge higher nightly rates for it.
It depends on how your risk, how risk averse. No, that's not right, is it?
So I think you are right. I think it is a bit of a risk, because the difference between something like an HMO, house of multiple occupation, or an SA, serviced accommodation, is that you know exactly what you're going to be getting every single month once you've secured a tenant for your HMO. But with your
If
service
with students, we'd say with
Yeah.
students, then because they move in at a certain time of the year and they're leaving at the same time in the year, and then you get new students that come in. If your HMO has sharing professionals, you can sometimes have more voids because at least with students, if you're housing only students, then you can see when they're moving in and checking out.
They're a lot more predictable than another working professional. But with service accommodation, it is entirely seasonal. So like a hotel, usually the summer seasons are peak seasons if your clientele tend to be touristic, the leisure type of client. But come winter time, people are usually saving up for Christmas, so you're much less likely to be booked out, and you need to be prepared to ride the peaks and troughs that come with the hospitality industry, basically.
Yeah.
So I think an HMO is great. If you can do a bit of both, that's great, but it's so, like, investing is such a personal preference.
Yeah.
You might love SA and you might love managing them yourselves and interacting with the guests and doing the whole admin side behind it.
I mean, it's a way that we know other people in the property industry who they've left their jobs to run HMO or an SA business. So that's a great way to be able to, if you're not satisfied or happy in your career and you want to go into property, then I guess it's very natural for people to go, okay, I'm going to run a property business, and it's usually an HMO and SA. So we would never have gone into these. Well, actually, no, we went into HMO straight away because we wanted to learn how to run it as a business. And we would say from our experience is that it's a really good idea to be able to branch into these after making sure that you have a stable base of investments before branching into the higher risk strategies.
The higher management strategies as well.
The higher management strategies, yeah.
So I think if you think of having sort of a tier system or like a pyramid of stability, let's say, the bottom
is your cookie cutter.
Should be a cookie cutter. We would recommend cookie cutter buy-to-lets that are going to be rented on like a 6-month, year-long tenancy with very little management, and then your HMOs above that, and then your service accommodations as the sort of slightly unpredictable properties that you might benefit really well from cash-wise on top.
Yeah.
I think that we see our service accommodations as sort of a bonus to our income, and our buy-to-lets, regardless of the situation, they have carried us through. That is our description of what an SA and HMO are. I hope that we've helped clarify those terminologies for you. If there's any sort of jargon that confuses you, feel free to send us a DM on Instagram. That's the best way to reach us, and we will address those questions for you. If there's anything else we can help you with, we want to be of service, so please let us know. And we look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. Bye.
Bye.